I should have turned back the moment the wind stopped. Not slowed, not shifted, stopped. As if the entire desert was holding its breath. I had been walking for hours, nothing but dunes, heat, and a silence so complete it felt unnatural. The locals called this place Seret Lafan, the desert of vanished footsteps. At first, I thought it was just a name. A legend meant to scare off tourists or foolish explorers like me. But then I noticed it, something strange in the shape of the dunes. No trails. No animal tracks. No signs of nomads or caravans. And worst of all, no footprints behind me. Every step I took pressed into the sand, then faded, smoothed out, erased by something unseen. Within seconds, the sand returned to its untouched, perfect state, as if it never wanted to remember anyone. I crouched down, touching the grains. They were dark, almost black, cold despite the sun burning overhead. They slid through my fingers like ash. And when they did, I swear I heard something. A faint hum. A breathing. It was coming from beneath the sand. I straightened instantly, heart racing. But the desert remained still, too still. Not a single gust of wind. Even the heat shimmer felt frozen. The silence pressed against my ears, thick and suffocating, until finally, far behind me, I heard the first sound the desert allowed. A voice. Faint. Soft. Calling my name. I spun around, expecting to see someone, another traveler, the guide who abandoned me, even a mirage. But there was nothing. Only endless dunes, shifting gently, as if something underneath them was moving. My legs grew weak. My throat tightened with panic. I wasn't alone out here, and whatever was with me did not walk on the surface. It moved beneath it. Just then, a distant figure appeared on a far dune, a tall, thin silhouette standing perfectly still, watching me. I tried to shout, but my voice died in my throat. When I blinked, the figure was gone. The sand beneath my boots trembled. I realized then why they called it the desert of vanished footsteps. Because the sand wasn't erasing footprints, it was swallowing them. And if I stayed here any longer, it would swallow more than that. It would swallow me. Night fell faster in the desert than I expected. One moment the sky was a burning sheet of gold, the next, it collapsed into a suffocating blackness that stretched across the dunes like a burial shroud. My fire crackled weakly, more for comfort than warmth. Nothing about this place felt cold on the skin. Only in the bones. The wind hadn't returned. Not once. And that was what terrified me most. In every desert I had ever crossed, the wind was constant, shaping dunes, carrying grains, whispering across the silence. But here, the air sat still, heavy, expectant. As if listening. I was halfway through forcing down a dry mouthful of water when I heard it. A whisper. So faint I thought it was the crackle of the fire. But then, my name, hissed from somewhere beyond the edge of the light. I froze, pulse thundering in my ears. The whisper came again, longer this time, softer, stretched thin like silk pulled until it tears. Come closer. The dune stirred. Not with wind, with something underneath. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it across the sand. The beam cut a pale path over the dunes, but the moment it touched the black sand, the light seemed to weaken, swallowed, absorbed. And then I saw them. Shadows moving beneath the surface. Long shapes, drifting through the sand as if it were water. Each time they passed, the dunes shivered, and whispered. I backed away slowly, the sand crunching softly under my boots. But the whispers grew louder. Not one voice now. Hundreds. Layered. Overlapping. Calling. Pleading. Warning. Some begged for help. Some whispered nonsense. Some screamed. But among all of them, one voice rose above the rest. Deeper. Ancient. Not human. A voice that did not whisper my name. It spoke it. With perfect clarity. I fell backwards, scrambling in the sand. My flashlight flickered violently, then steadied, pointing toward a dune that seemed to pulse from within. Like a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. A crack formed at its peak, thin at first, then widening, spilling black grains like blood. The whispers stopped. All at once. The silence that followed was far worse. Something enormous shifted under the dune. Close. Too close. The sand began to sink inward, collapsing into a slow, spiraling funnel. It dragged loose grains toward its center with gentle, terrifying inevitability. Then I heard a final whisper. Not from around me. From beneath me. Don't run, you woke me. My entire body turned to ice. And for the first time since entering this cursed place, I felt the wind return, not from the sky, but rising from the sand. From below. Something ancient had stirred. And it was breathing. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The dunes had whispered my name. Something beneath the sand had spoken directly into my mind. And the spiraling sinkhole, still collapsing slowly in the distance, felt like an open mouth waiting to swallow me whole. By dawn, my nerves were shattered. The sky glowed a dull, dusty red, too red, as if the sun struggled to rise over this cursed place. I packed my things, hands trembling, and climbed the nearest dune in hope of finding any sign of life. I didn't find life. I found him. An old man in tattered desert robes crouched on the far side of the dune, drawing strange symbols in the sand with a crooked bone. His skin was cracked and gray, his eyes clouded over with age, yet somehow he looked straight at me the moment I approached. Not with surprise. Not with fear. With recognition. As if he'd been waiting. "You heard them," he rasped. It wasn't a question. My throat tightened. "What are they?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his robes with a shaking hand and pulled out a folded sheet of leather, weathered, torn, stained with something dark. A map. He thrust it into my hands with sudden urgency. "No further," he whispered. "The black sand is a mouth, and you stand on its teeth." My skin crawled. Unfolding the map revealed a rough sketch of the desert, dunes marked in fading ink, a jagged black circle in the middle labeled only with a single forbidden symbol. A spiral. The same shape as the collapse I had seen last night. "What is this supposed to be?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. The old man grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "An ancient prison," he hissed. "A place where no footstep should ever fall. That map," he tapped it frantically, "was drawn by the last man who entered the dunes and returned alive." Returned alive. The words struck deep. "What happened to him?" I asked. The old man's expression darkened. He cut out his own tongue to stop the whispers. But even then, he spoke in his sleep. I took a step back, gripping the map tighter. The old man leaned close, so close I felt his breath tremble against my ear as he whispered. He said the god beneath the sand dreams of the surface. And anyone who wakes it, becomes part of the dream. A shiver ran down my spine. "Go back," he whispered. "Burn the map. Forget what you saw. Or the dunes will remember you." I stared at him, at the map, at the cursed horizon where the sand still trembled slightly from whatever had moved beneath it. But I couldn't leave. Not now. The whispers hadn't been random. They had called my name. And deep inside me, beneath the terror, something else stirred. Curiosity. Or fate. The old man seemed to sense it. His face twisted in despair. "You've already heard it," he said. "It's too late. It knows you now." Before I could respond, he backed away, stumbling into the dunes, refusing to look at me again. Within minutes, he vanished behind a dune as if swallowed by the earth itself. I looked down at the old, cracked map. At the forbidden spiral. At the handwritten warning beneath it. "Do not dig." My pulse quickened. Because the ground beneath my feet was beginning to vibrate. I should have listened. Every instinct, every warning, every whisper in that cursed desert told me to turn back. But something deeper, something I could not name, kept pulling me toward the black circle marked on the map. It felt less like a place, and more like a destination written into my bones. By midday, the sun was an unforgiving white disk overhead. The heat didn't just burn, it pressed down like a hand trying to push me into the sand. Yet even in that unbearable heat, the black sand remained strangely cool beneath my boots. Too cool. I found the exact spot marked on the map, a shallow depression in the dunes where the sand looked darker, heavier, almost oily. Standing there felt like standing on a lid, sealing something ancient beneath. But my curiosity rotted into obsession. I dropped my pack, grabbed my small digging spade, and drove it into the sand. The moment metal touched the grains, the wind died. Silence fell over the desert like a curtain. Even the sun seemed to dim. I dug again. And again. The sand shifted strangely, like water that didn't want to be touched. Each scoop slid back instantly into place, as if the desert were trying to undo what I had done. The third time I dug, I heard it. A low, guttural sound beneath the earth. Not quite a voice. Not quite movement. A breath. The sand around my feet pulsed softly, once, twice, like a heartbeat in the ground. I froze. Something was alive down there. I should have stopped. I should have turned and run until my lungs burst. But instead, I dropped to my knees and brushed deeper with my hands, pushing aside the cold black grains. My fingers scraped something solid. Stone. Smooth, polished, impossibly cold. I brushed more sand away, revealing a surface etched with ancient symbols, curving lines that twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Some resembled eyes. Some resembled mouths. Some resembled something entirely alien. I leaned closer, brushing away more sand. And the stone twitched. Just slightly. As if reacting to my touch. A whisper rose from the ground, not from above, but from inside the stone. "You found me." My heart slammed against my ribs. I fell back, scrambling, but the sand rose around my legs, gripping my boots like cold hands. The depression in the dunes widened, sagged, then slowly, began to sink. No. Not sink. Open. A massive slab of black stone surfaced, more of it now pushing through the sand like a creature rising from the deep. Runes ignited faintly with dull crimson light, pulsing in time with that unnatural heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The whispers grew louder. Hundreds of voices. Thousands. Layered and overlapping, all speaking at once, all coming from beneath the sand. I stumbled backward, but the ground shifted under me, swallowing my heels, pulling me closer. The stone slab was no longer still. It was rising. Tilting. Unfolding. And only then did I realize what I had uncovered wasn't a stone at all. It was a hand. A massive, obsidian hand pushing its way out of the desert, each finger carved with writhing symbols that crawled across the surface like living veins. The whispers sharpened into a single unified voice, deep, ancient, impossibly old. "I am waking." The sand beneath me liquefied, dragging me toward the rising hand. And I finally understood why the map said do not dig. Not to protect the desert. Not to protect history. But to protect me. Because whatever I had awakened was no longer dreaming. It was listening. I don't remember falling into the sand. 1 second I was scrambling backward, trying to escape the obsidian hand rising from the earth. The next, the ground beneath me gave way like wet ash, pulling me into the dune as though the desert had grown hungry. I hit the sand hard, sliding down into a shallow pit that hadn't been there seconds before. The spade flew from my hand. My breath was ragged, sharp, useless, because the entire dune was moving. Not collapsing. Breathing. The obsidian hand stretched higher, breaking free of the sand with a slow, crackling groan that vibrated through my bones. Each fingertip glowed with faint red symbols, pulsing in time with that monstrous heartbeat rumbling below. Thump, thump, thump. The sound grew louder, stronger, deeper, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Then the sand around the hand bulged, rose, split apart. A second structure emerged, a curved slab of stone, etched with runes that writhed like trapped serpents. And then another. And another. Not stone. Ribs. Black, towering ribs the size of pillars, pushing up through the desert as if something colossal was forcing its way toward the surface. The whispers returned, no longer soft, no longer faint. They roared. Thousands of voices overlapping, merging into a single ancient chorus that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. Wake! 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 My head throbbed. My eyes watered. Blood trickled from my nose, but I couldn't look away. The sand beneath me vibrated violently, fine grains leaping into the air with each pulse. The dunes in the distance were collapsing inward, drawn toward a growing, spiraling sinkhole forming around the ribs. The creature, the thing, the god beneath the black sand, was pushing itself toward daylight for the first time in millennia. A wave of heat rolled through the pit, so intense I gasped. The sand glowed faintly beneath me, tiny red veins spreading outward like cracks in the desert floor. I heard something then. A sound I will never forget. A breath. Not human. Not animal. A vast, cavernous inhalation that sucked the air from the dunes and rattled the stones beneath. The desert exhaled. And with it came a voice. Not a whisper. Not a hallucination. A presence. It filled the air, the sand, my mind, my skull, pressing into me with ancient force. You opened my grave. I clutched the pit wall, nails digging into the cold black sand. Who, what are you? I choked. The voice shook the world. I am older than wind. Older than stone. Older than the first man's shadow. The ribs shifted, rising higher. The hand clenched, scattering sand in a wide arc. Runes burned brighter, bleeding deep crimson light into the air. The ground trembled with each movement, like the desert itself was bowing. I slept beneath your world, the voice growled. Now, I wake for it. The sand beneath me cracked. A fissure opened, thin at first, then widening with a violent snap, splitting under my feet. Heat surged upward. A blast of red light erupted from the crack, throwing me back. I hit the sand hard and rolled. My ears rang. My vision blurred. But through the haze, I saw it. A shape far larger than the hand. Far larger than the ribs. A head. Or something like a head, smooth, featureless, carved from black stone, pushing slowly upward through the dunes. As it rose, sand cascaded off its surface like falling water. The immense structure throbbed with each heartbeat, runes glowing brighter, 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 until they ignited in a blinding blaze of crimson light. The desert screamed. The dunes shook violently. The sky turned a murky, swirling gray. Every grain of black sand lifted into the air as if gravity reversed. And the voice, that monstrous, ancient voice, echoed once more, filling every corner of the desert. The first awakening begins. I scrambled to my feet, stumbling backward, sand lifting around me like weightless ash. The colossal god continued to rise. It was no longer sleeping, no longer dreaming. It was awakening. And I was the one who set it free. The fissure swallowed me. One moment I was staggering backward across the dunes. The next, the sand beneath my feet gave way completely. I fell, sliding into darkness that smelled of dust, decay, and something older than the desert itself. The freefall ended abruptly as I landed on a stone floor. Cold, smooth, not natural. This wasn't a cave. It was a temple. Everywhere I looked, the walls stretched upward into shadow. Carvings, hundreds of them, etched into black stone, twisted into grotesque forms. Figures with too many eyes. Figures with hands growing from their mouths. Figures screaming silently into eternity. The air was thick with the scent of ash and something metallic. Every breath I drew tasted like sand and blood. I tried to stand, but the ground beneath me vibrated softly, like the heartbeat of the god I had awakened above. It wasn't far. I could feel its awareness pressing into the walls, the floor, the air itself. I shone my flashlight across the chamber. The beam flickered over enormous statues, humanoid, but impossibly long-limbed. Their faces were hidden in shadow, mouths open as if screaming silently. Each statue held a pedestal. On every pedestal rested a black crystal, pulsing faintly red in the dim light. I swear, the crystals were watching me. A corridor opened to my left, black and endless. I hesitated, but the whispers followed me here. No longer gentle, no longer distant, they were screaming now, dozens of voices overlapping, pleading, warning, threatening. I took a step forward. The stone floor groaned under me. A door, or something like a door, shifted in the distance. Not swinging, not opening. Breathing. I approached it cautiously. My flashlight beam trembled as I drew closer. The closer I got, the warmer the air became. Not heat from the sun, but alive. I felt it then, a tingling in my fingers, my arms, the very marrow of my bones. Energy. Ancient, dark, waiting. The carvings along the wall seemed to move, subtly, like shadows dancing in a corner. I blinked. Nothing. But then, faint whispers again, closer, louder, right in my ear. You woke it, it knows you. I froze. The corridor stretched farther than I could see. At the end, a faint red glow pulsed rhythmically. Not a light. A heartbeat. I stepped closer. The air thickened. The floor beneath me pulsed, like sand vibrating far above, synced to the heartbeat of the god I had disturbed. A staircase emerged from the darkness, spiraling downward, black stone slick with something. It descended into absolute nothingness. The whispers rose again, chanting, unintelligible yet unmistakably commanding. Enter, or be forgotten. I knew instinctively, this was the heart of the god's prison. The temple beneath the sand wasn't built to hold people. It was built to contain a god. And now, it was awake. I swallowed hard, gripping my flashlight. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the map, the old man's warning, and the black spiral marked on the sand, all of it, pulled me forward. Step by step, I descended into the unknown. The temple swallowed me. And the god beneath the black sand stirred with every pulse of my heart. The deeper I went, the heavier the air became. It pressed against my chest, filled my lungs, clawed at my mind. Every step down the spiral staircase made my heart pound faster, like it was synchronizing with something far below. At the bottom, the corridor opened into a cavern so vast I could not see the edges. Shadows twisted along the walls like living smoke, moving independently of any light. And in the center, the air seemed to bend, shimmer, pulse with a rhythm that was not natural. I knew immediately that this was it. The god beneath the black sand. It rose from the darkness, formless yet immense. A mass of shadow, red veins glowing faintly across its surface like molten cracks. It had no eyes, no mouth, and yet I felt its gaze. I felt its hunger. Its intelligence. Its awareness, stretching into my mind like icy fingers probing my thoughts. The whispers became one voice. Deep, endless, ancient. You dared to wake me, you belong to me now. The ground trembled with every pulse of its being. Rubble shifted. The crystals from the temple floor floated gently, orbiting the god's form. The air smelled of ash, iron, and the cold inevitability of death. I stumbled back, my flashlight barely cutting through the oppressive darkness. Every instinct screamed to flee, but my feet were rooted to the ground. My mind, frozen with awe and terror. The god moved. Slowly. But every movement caused the cavern to quake. The walls groaned as if they remembered the weight of its body. The ceiling itself seemed to bend, rippling like water over a stone. Then I heard it, not a voice, but thoughts. Your world, fragile. Your species, insignificant. And yet, I hunger. I fell to my knees, covering my face, praying the madness wouldn't claim me. But the god's hunger was patient. It spread into the temple, seeping through the cracks in the stone, reaching into the sand above, beyond, into the desert. And then I understood, the old man, the map, the black sand. This god had been imprisoned for millennia, but the prison was weakening. And I had given it the first taste of freedom. The shadows shifted. They coalesced into limbs, tendrils, faces that screamed silently, frozen in terror, reaching toward me. I could see the souls of the damned, the worshippers, the fools who came before me. All consumed. All trapped. All part of the god beneath. And then it spoke again, directly into my mind. I will rise, and the desert will remember your name forever. The crystals on the floor shattered in a burst of red light. The ceiling cracked. Dust and sand rained down. The god's form swelled, stretching toward the temple walls, the stairway, the very sky above. I realized with a cold, helpless clarity. I could not stop it. I could only survive. Or die trying. The desert screamed. I didn't know sand could move like water. I didn't know the air could burn with cold. But the moment the god fully stirred beneath the black dunes, everything changed. The wind rose in violent, unnatural gusts, not from the sky, but from the desert itself. Grains of black sand lifted like a living sea, swirling in colossal waves, forming twisting columns that reached higher than any dune. Each swirl of sand carried screams, thousands of them, voices of the lost, of those consumed by the god before me. I stumbled backward, covering my face. The sand stung, burned, and yet it carried no pain, only the suffocating knowledge that it was alive, aware, hungry. Above, the sky darkened. A storm unlike any I had ever seen, not clouds, not lightning, but pure ash, carried on wind rising from the bowels of the desert. It moved like smoke from a colossal fire, and at its center, the darkness of the god itself, climbing higher, twisting through the desert, stretching its long, shapeless form toward the horizon. The ground trembled beneath me. The dunes collapsed inward, spilling sand like blood into chasms that had opened everywhere. I realized then, the god was feeding the storm. Every gust, every column of ash, every whisper of sand was part of it, part of its awakening. I ran. But running did nothing. The storm moved faster than my feet. Every step I took, the sand surged, lifting, wrapping around my boots like cold fingers, dragging me backward. The whispers became voices I could not block, screams, pleas, threats, and one voice above all, calling my name. The obsidian hand I had seen before? It rose again, breaking through the dunes, fingers clawing at the sky. The ribs, the god's colossal frame, all shattered the ground, sending sand and stone flying into the storm. It was as if the desert itself had turned against me, obeying the god's will. Lightning, or something like lightning, red and jagged, flashed within the storm. And the air carried a voice, deep, ancient, unstoppable. All who disturb me, all who see me, will vanish. I stumbled, nearly falling into a sinkhole opening beneath my feet. The sand pulled me, curling around my body. I fought against it, every muscle screaming, every heartbeat a hammer in my chest. Above the storm, I saw it. The god's head, rising like a mountain of shadow and red cracks, moving across the dunes, consuming the horizon. The black sand churned in waves, swallowing everything in its path. The desert was no longer a place of land. It was a living thing, breathing, hunting, reshaping itself under the god's will. I realized then, there was no safety. No escape. Every step, every movement, every breath was already accounted for. The ash storm was the god's shadow made flesh. It would not stop. It would not rest. And if I survived, I would carry the memory of its awakening forever. I don't know how long I ran. The ash storm swallowed everything, the dunes, the horizon, even the sky itself. The god beneath the black sand stretched across the desert, an impossible shadow with glowing red veins, moving with a deliberate, unstoppable purpose. I stumbled into a shallow crevice, the walls pressing close, my chest heaving, lungs burning. Somewhere above, the colossal hand rose again, reaching toward the heavens, pulling sand, air, and shadows into its wake. I knew I wouldn't survive. Not like this. And yet, I had one chance to leave a trace. One chance to tell the world. I fumbled with my camera, fingers slick with sweat and black sand. The battery barely held, but I had to record it. If anyone saw this, maybe, just maybe, they'd know. The red glow of the god's form cast long, terrifying shadows across the desert. The ground vibrated beneath me, the whispers now roaring like 1,000 voices screaming directly into my mind. I pressed record. If anyone sees this, do not come to the black sand desert. There is something beneath, something alive. I woke it. I thought it was just a legend. But it's real. It's awake. A tremor split the ground, throwing me to my knees. Dust and black sand rained down. The shadow stretched closer, reaching for me. It's enormous, indescribable, ancient. I can feel its mind, its hunger. It's everywhere. Another tremor, stronger. I looked up. The god's shadow eclipsed the horizon. Its hand stretched across the dunes, tendrils of black sand whipping into the storm. If you hear this, do not touch the sand, it's listening, it knows. The camera jolted. The last thing I saw before the lens filled with black sand was the red-veined head of the god, rising impossibly tall, eyes, or whatever they were, locking onto me. And then, silence. No whispers. No wind. No heartbeat. Just nothing. The recording survived. But I did not. If you are hearing this, know this. The god beneath the black sand is awake. Do not go there. Do not disturb it. And whatever you do not dig. The final frame captured the desert alive, swirling black sand forming shapes, hands, faces, mouths, but the last image is burned into my memory forever, a mountain of shadows, impossibly tall, a god whose hunger had no end. And the whispers, they linger still,